It's another fine day at Camp Dynasty. I am Counselor Austin, joined by Counselor Collin. And today is March 25th. Do you know what that means, Collin?
It's officially Odunze Day because Reception Perception dropped the Odunze chart on the timeline, and henceforth will be known as Odunze Day.
You know, I was going for 1 month away from the first round of the NFL draft, officially 1 month away, but the 25th of March, man, forever remembered as Odunze Day because, like you said, I mean, the man is making me think about everything I've done for the last 7 months because he is the king of wide receivers. That was a very big time endorsement for Odunze, but I think we'll get into some of that today because what we are talking about, this is something we did last year. It's the unofficial or maybe even the official start to Camp Dynasty's path to the draft. We are 1 month away now, which means we are turning our attention more toward the NFL draft, the narratives that go along with it, and how our campers fit into this equation, which starts today with mock draft reactions. We will be looking at several mock drafts that have dropped very recently in the last week or two, seeing where the campers fell according to the experts and what we think about the potential spots that they are proposing. We will be going through our top players overall, and I did not forget there are running backs in this class. We will talk about them at the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, this is so mock drafts, your mileage may vary on how much you're consuming them, how much they matter to you, but most of them are informed by internal opinion. And I'm talking internal like coaching staffs, GMs, scouts, that kind of stuff. So the guys with information are using that information to pump out mock drafts. Now, whether that is what ends up being come 1 month from today, that's another question. Or if we're pumping smoke in order to, levy some trade value or whatever. So there's some questions surrounding it, questions that we hope to parse and potentially answer through this podcast, but some interesting stuff here. I can say that.
Like I've said many times, this is the point of the year where I just am consuming an unhealthy amount of mock drafts. And it's not for it's not because I need to know. It's that time of the year. It just feels right to be reading mocks to find out what others are hearing or thinking about a class. Our panel is star-studded here. And we've expanded the panel. Last year, we only did 3. This year, we are introducing 2 additional mock drafters into the fold. And then we'll bring in some other sources later when we talk about running backs, because right now, most mocks only going to be 1 round. Not going to find any running backs in there this year. And in some cases, you're not really going to find many in the second round. So had to dig out some 3rd round, 3 round or bigger mocks. We got that for later. Those are maybe some less savory names or more of the C-listers of the business. But our A-list panel.
Where do we fall if they're C-listers?
I mean, I don't want to talk about it. Our A-list panel. Let's introduce them. Of course, we have Daniel Jeremiah, who recently released, I believe it was mock 3.0. That was on March 19th. That is what we are referencing with DJ. Kiper, Mel Kiper, the godfather of the draft, obviously another huge name in the business for a long time. He also dropped a mock on March 19th, so we will have that. Ringer, last year, pulled the head draft guy there, Danny Kelly's mock. Danny Kelly has not released a mock since March 4th, which means we are subbing Ben Solak for our Ringer representation, he released a mock on March 15th. And then because I love these guys, I mean, if there's like if it's like, who's your biggest influence on your podcasting, it's got to be my guys, Connor Rogers, Trevor Sikkema from NFL Stock Exchange. That is a PFF product. When you're not listening to Camp Dynasty, listen to that. I have both of their mocks. I have Connor Rogers through NBC. That was released on March 18th. And then Trevor Sikkema, who is now the lead draft analyst at PFF. What a story for that guy, the come-up story from draft Twitter to the lead guy at PFF. He released a 3-round mock on March 18th. So we'll even have some Sikkema for the running back portion of this program. But those are the 5 guys we'll be focusing most on today's episode. And you can go check out all of their mock drafts on their respective platforms.
Yeah, we got some of the, like, Mel Kiper, the OG of the business. Unfortunately, like, everything Mel Kiper posts is behind a paywall, which hurts a little bit because, like, you know, you want to see what the granddaddy has, what Pops is putting out there. DJ, it's pretty easy to get to his stuff. It's all on the NFL website. Same with Ben Solak. You can, like, go to the Ringer draft guide, which is, I think, the best draft guide to look at. It's an attractive site. And also all of the takes are on podcast form. So I know those 3. Mel Kiper, I used to listen to, but now they're like, yeah, you can go visit ESPN Plus. And it's like, all right, can we just talk about the prospects? Like, I feel like we're getting to a point. But then we also got our other guys. Who do we have for?
I don't want to talk about them yet.
Come on. Let's give them their their due.
All right. So the other guys on the panel, well, actually, one of them is a guy, the other one is an entity.
Right.
But for our later round portions, we have a returning name here, Chad Reuter, who we did bring into the fold last year during this episode because he is, for some reason, publishing 3-round mocks every time this time of the year. So we have Chad Reuter back. This is a name of the business. He's an ESPN guy that I think is now with the NFL network and in that site. And then a site that I use to reference draft order and the order of picks. They also release their own mock drafts. That would be Tankathon. There is no author attribution that I can give because they don't list it. This is just coming from Tankathon, the entity. So we will have them later in the program as well for running back landing spots.
All right, there we go. Give them their
no disrespect to Chad Reuter, who, I mean, this is a name that I remember from 15 years ago, but never quite. No, you know what? No disrespect. Good job, Chad. You've made a great career out of this. All right. So with all of that said, that is the panel for today's episode. Let's get in to the meat and potatoes and start talking about these landing spots. But before we get to our guys, before we get to obviously Marvin, Nabers, and everybody else, we're not including quarterbacks because that is a whole separate conversation. And for our purposes, we did Superflex last week. We're back to being a 1 quarterback show. We're going to keep the quarterbacks out of this discussion, but I can't have this conversation, Collin, without talking about the latest narratives around the quarterback class because they're changing every day. They're absolutely changing by the minute sometimes. And the latest one, JJ McCarthy, it's happening. Latest buzz, Tom Pelissero comes out and says every single executive that he has talked to is saying that the Commanders are going to select JJ McCarthy with the 2nd overall pick. Do you believe that?
Man, we've been trending in this direction for months now where JJ McCarthy, 1st rounder. Hey, look at that. Hey, JJ McCarthy, top 20. And that was believable. Then it's like JJ McCarthy, top 15. I wouldn't be surprised if JJ McCarthy went top 10. And I'm like, I would be, And now we're talking about it went to top 6, and now it's top 2, and sooner or later it's going to be top 1. I don't know. Who knows at this point? I don't think this is true. I don't think you're going to pass up on a guy with May's tools or even Jaden Daniels' tools for JJ McCarthy, who I'm sure is a great interview and has untapped potential and is a player that is worthy of giving a shot at a starting quarterback position in the NFL. That being said, I don't think he's got close to the ceiling of May, who should probably be selected number 2 without thinking about it. I don't think he's got the ceiling of Jaden Daniels, even, who I'm a little lower on than consensus. And he should probably be selected next after Drake May. So I don't understand what the hell is going on. He must just be super charming. He's going out to all these steak dinners with GMs and these top 30 visits, and he is working overtime. He's been with the PR team, and he's got a brand, and he's selling it, man, because this is insane to me.
I recently said that this May Daniels debate was some smoke happening. I was like, May is the number 2 pick. I don't know why this Daniels thing is running wild. This is the actual smoke.
Yeah.
I
it
think
has to be.
There's enough, belief from many folks, and I'm assuming that also bleeds into the NFL world. There's enough people that legitimately believe that Jay Daniels could be the best or the second best quarterback in this draft. That's fine. The McCarthy being number 2 thing, I believe this is where the smoke starts, because I feel like you have a lot of rumors about teams that want to maybe move up for him. Minnesota has been connected. I mean, Denver, there's conversations around that. And basically any team in that range. You had Antonio Pierce coming out recently and saying, who wouldn't want this guy? He's a winner. They won a national title. You have all these teams in that range that are suddenly connected to McCarthy in some way. And now there's reports that Washington wants to take him at 2. I mean, it just really, I don't know what Washington's leverage is, because what leverage do they need? Take your quarterback at 2. They're not going to trade down. I would hope not. So I don't know why it's happening, but I don't believe this for a second. And if it happens in a month's time and McCarthy's the number 2 guy off the board, then so be it. But I cannot believe that at all.
The only thing that I can imagine why the Commanders would do this is if they have on good reporting that the Patriots love JJ. That's the only thing that makes sense. And then they can trade down to 3, get something, and then draft Drake May. But this is the future of your franchise, your quarterback. Why are we even entertaining not just sticking and picking them? And it would be a very Commanders thing to do to mess this up. But I mean, that's why they're the Commanders. That's why they're a poverty franchise. So if this happens, and I'm saying if they, move down and somebody jumps them and takes Drake May, maybe they're like, yeah, no, we're taking May or something of the sort. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would be disappointed.
So stay tuned for the ever revolving quarterback narrative machine that will be pumping from now until April 25th. That is a guarantee. This is only the latest story of this quarterback class, but it's fun. It's fun to have a quarterback class that produces this level of intensity and drama, because it's not always the case. But
hey, not too long ago, we were arguing Kenny Pickett versus Malik Willis.
Yes. And
so I'm happy we're here.
We had to endure that. But as good as the quarterback class is, or may be, the rest of this class, the top of it at least, is equally as impressive and maybe more impressive, because I think some of these players are better than a lot of the quarterbacks pound for pound that we are talking about in this range, JJ McCarthy included. So let's talk about how the mock drafts fell for some of our top players. And of course, we have to start with the man himself, Marvin Harrison Jr., player that we have expected to be the 101, and nothing has changed. There's been a little bit of fire with Malik Nabers is maybe better, and we're trying here.
That's believable.
Yeah, there's there's narratives at play here. This is a very, very good top end in terms of wide receiver talent. We'll obviously talk. It is Rome Odunze Day after all. We'll talk about that too. But Marvin is still the guy right now, and that is reflected in these mock drafts. So for landing spots, we have 3 of them. The most popular was the Cardinals. No surprise. This was our perfect match for Marvin. This was Kuiper, Solak, and Rodgers had him going 4 to the Cardinals. We also had Trevor Sikkema, number 5 to the Chargers. And I believe he was still the first receiver taken. The Cardinals may have traded down in that mock, I believe, which is a very realistic scenario. So this is also something that's very much in play. We saw what the Cardinals did in the draft last year. Maybe they move down again, and LA ends up with that opportunity to draft Marvin. And then we had the ultimate chaos scenario, as DJ put it in his mock, which is the Jets trading up from 10 to get to number 5 and select Marvin Harrison Jr. So the Cardinals, the Chargers, and the Jets. What stands out to you with this group of teams?
I think that they all make a lot of sense. I don't know if the Jets are the most interesting one, in my opinion, because we've been hearing Cardinals, we've been hearing Chargers as wide receiver destinations. The Jets, to me, is the one that stands out, and obviously that's also pointed out in DJ's mock. Like, this is interesting. Like, I don't know, chaos. And the Jets are very clearly all in with this Aaron Rodgers team. The coaching staff is approaching a point where they haven't won a ton of games, and maybe patience is running thin. So they are doing everything to win now. They go out and get like Tyron Smith to bolster the offensive line. They signed another tackle. They are like fully all in. So I wouldn't even be surprised if they traded up and Marvin was on the board at 5, because the Chargers have so many needs that maybe they do trade back in a wide receiver class like this and try to load up on different kinds of talent. But the Jets are the one that stands out to me, because it's obvious that the Cardinals and Chargers need a wide receiver. The Jets, maybe it's not a glaring need after acquiring Mike Williams via free agency, and obviously Garrett Wilson's in place, but getting a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't hurt to have a cornerstone next to Garrett Wilson. So that's the one that stood out the most to me.
Yeah, I really liked that scenario, because how we got there was that in DJ's mock, Minnesota is trading up to 4 for that quarterback. And then you have the Chargers then seeing an opportunity to accumulate assets with teams wanting to get in for Marvin after this run of 4 quarterbacks. And while the Chargers need wide receiver talent pretty desperately, I think it's fair to say that they have enough other needs where if a team is willing to pay the price and they only have to move down, the 5 spots, there's a realistic scenario that they get one of the other receivers at 10. And even if they don't, you're still walking away with a good player. I think this illustrates something that could really throw a wrench in how clear it seemed like the top of this draft is in terms of these landing spots. Like, obviously Arizona here as the favorite and one that we've identified and said, man, I really want this to happen. I really want Marvin to go to Arizona. I think if that team, if it's Minnesota or anybody else that is that hungry to get a quarterback there, the Cardinals have to listen. I mean, you need a wide receiver or not. A talent like Marvin's there, sure, but if a team's willing to give you multiple ones or, give you a sweet deal to get a quarterback, I feel like we've seen the Cardinals be willing to play that way before, meaning last year with Monty Ossenfort. So I think as clear and obvious as it seems, like Cardinals, Chargers, Giants, these are wide receiver landing spots, prime, line them up 4, 5, 6. I think trades could really, really shake this thing up. That being said, I'm gonna single out the Chargers as the spot here because I think it's more realistic that the Cardinals trade down than a double trade down. Like DJ's got the double trade. I think if you're the Chargers and you see that move and now you are staring Marvin Harrison Jr. in the face, a player that Jim Harbaugh knows very well, like you just do it. Like this is the guy, this is the new face of the wide receiver room, much in the way that we were talking about Malik Nabers could potentially be stepping into this Keon Allen role, this target hog role in the offense. Suddenly that's now Marvin Harrison Jr. playing as a bigger player, primarily on the outside. You can fill in inside or outside in rather than inside out. And I think it becomes an easy pick. So we haven't talked a lot about Marvin falling all the way to 5 because it just feels so locked in
all the way.
But man, that would be pretty shocking if in the end it was Herbert to Harrison, the connection there. And I mean, that just only bolsters his case for the number 1 pick in this draft.
That would be insane because we've been talking about pairing up a receiver with Justin Herbert, a young receiver, and the Chargers should go wide receiver in the first round, and they did last year. And that's why Quentin Johnston's stock was so high, because it was like, okay, Herbert got his guy, Keon Allen, Mike Williams probably are not long for this team, which turned out to be true. And obviously it didn't work out, but you take the swing again with a new GM, new head coach, and you bring in a guy that is as close to bulletproof as we can get. I mean, sign, seal, deliver, right? So, I would love it as somebody like that has the 101 or like the 102 in Superflex, whatever. Like, if you have Marvin Harrison Jr., either of these spots are fantastic. So, the Jets wouldn't be bad either. I don't think there's a bad landing spot for Marvin, but like the Cardinals and the Chargers, there's so many targets for him to soak up there. It feels like easy money.
One thing about Marvin, we'll talk about reception perception a little bit because that just dropped and it's very exciting. Go check it out. Obviously, receptionperception.com, Matt Harmon's work. It's worth the investment to make, to learn more about these players. One thing that really stood out to me in his profile for Marvin, I think it was a plus 16% double team rate this last year, which was the highest in the history of college reception perception. So
I bet you Jim Harbaugh attributed to that a little bit.
Right. So the respect was given to Marvin at a level that not many college receivers get, and he still had the season that he had this year. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the player. But another very talented wide receiver, Collin, Malik Nabers. Maybe even better. That's what they're telling me. I don't know. Now I got somebody telling me Rome might even be better than Marvin. So they're all good, guys. That's the point. But obviously, a lot of these landing spots are going to overlap because we're talking about a lot of teams at the top of this draft that need wide receivers. So for Nabers, we also have the Chargers here making an appearance. That is his earliest spot at pick 5. That was Kuiper and Solak. Doesn't get much further than that because then we have the Giants at number 6. DJ and Rodgers have him there. And then Trevor Sikkema was the lone person that had him falling to number 9 to the Bears, which is another commonly mocked wide receiver spot. So obviously we know about the Chargers. Talked about it with Marvin. It's a prime spot. There's no surprises there. The Giants is very interesting because we've talked a lot about Odunze going there. We haven't really talked a ton about Nabers going there, but it doesn't really change anything for me between the two players. I think of these top spots, this is probably the least exciting spot, but it doesn't mean it's a bad spot. Well, how would you feel if Nabers was a New York Giant?
I wouldn't feel bad because I feel like Nabers can do what they're missing. Now, the reason it's the least interesting, like you said, is because they've invested so heavily in guys that are good in the slot and guys that are good downfield. And none of them are as good in the slot or as good downfield as Malik Nabers is. I understand that. But when you're building a wide receiver room, you build it a particular way. And when you have invested in like a Wan'Dale Robinson a couple of years ago, which I understand is not like a super high caliber player. He's not. I get it. Just give me a minute.
Hey, he made Will Levis look a lot better than Will Levis was.
Hey, they're trying to do it again in Tennessee. They're just pumping assets in to see if the Will Levis is any good. But you have a lot of guys that fill the slot role, which is why we were a little questionable about them taking a wide receiver last year, because there are a lot of slot players. And Malik Nabers can play outside, but he is most efficient out of the slot. So I wouldn't question the role if they take him at 6. I just doubt they take him at 6 is kind of where I'm at. I feel like they are a more likely landing spot for Odunze, who plays more of the X outside receiver. So that's why, I mean, I wouldn't be mad if they took him and like it's a declaration that, hey, this is our number 1 wide receiver and we're going to use him like it. But I just don't see it happening is basically where I'm at.
Yeah, I'm going to fold in the Odunze conversation here because what's interesting is that Odunze is also being mocked to the Giants very frequently. So between these two players, in every single one of these mock drafts, the mock draft has the Giants taking a wide receiver at number 6. So with Odunze, it's, we have 3 to the Giants. That's Kuiper, Solak, and Sikkema. And then we have the other 2, DJ and Rodgers, with him going to the Bears. So it's very much mix and match. It's like if you're not going to the Giants, you're going to the Bears and vice versa. I do think it's a little bit interesting that we've gotten to a point where the Giants are like a no doubt wide receiver team. Because I feel like for a little while there, it was like, man, this team really needs offensive line. There's some really, really good offensive tackles at the top of this class as well. Maybe they go that direction. We've kind of swung now to the point where it seems like it's going to be a wide receiver. I mean, this is the one spot here that I wouldn't be surprised if they passed. Like if it's like if Arizona sits, if LA sits, we go, Marvin and Nabers, Marvin or Odunze, then maybe Chicago is that third team. Maybe the Giants do pass. I'm just not sold that it's as clear as it seems via these mocks.
Do you think they're ready to move on from Evan Neal already? Is my question.
So there's been conversation about if you draft a tackle at number 6, you could theoretically kick Evan Neal to guard.
6'7" guard?
I know. That's what I'm not.
No, like, I know. I'm just talking it through.
Yeah. So
I know you're not advocating for it, but I'm just going through the
rationale though.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't see that happening is basically where I'm at. And like, I feel like Odunze would solve a lot of problems for this Giants offense, and it would help Daniel Jones out a lot, who you need to look good as a GM and a coach because you just extended him. Bad idea. I've been on that train since day one, but like you could take Joe Alt, sure, and maybe that's a good idea, but Odunze is a safer option, I think.
Is New York a sneaky trade up?
They should be.
Like I'm thinking like 6-4.
Yeah.
Arizona guarantees themselves one of the top 2 receivers on their board. The Giants move up, take McCarthy. He sits behind Daniel Jones for a little while, and then maybe there's opportunities to play even as a rookie, which, my thoughts about that, but it's not a situation where he would have to start right away, which is actually a good thing. So, and there was some comments in the media today by John Mara about the top of this class. So I don't know, maybe.
I think they should be in the market for a quarterback because Daniel Jones is not the long-term answer for a franchise. And like, you can't sit in quarterback mediocrity for a long time. Like, you need to get either a guy that's going to raise your ceiling or raise your floor. And I don't know if Daniel Jones does either of those things. I think he keeps you where you are. And I don't know. So should they take JJ? Yes. Will they? Unlikely. Will they take a wide receiver? I hope so. And I hope it's Odunze. And I hope Nabers goes to the Chargers, who are the more popular. I mean, 2 of the 5 guys that we're looking at here have him mocked to the Chargers. And the reason I like that the most is because he can, and I understand it's a different coaching staff, but he can slot in and do exactly what Keenan Allen was doing on like 1.5 speed. Like, he can go into the slot and he can, because Keenan Allen plays, I don't have the number on hand, but last time I checked, it was like 48% of his slot snaps in the slot. And Nabers, that would be awesome if he was doing that, because if you watch the tape, his best stuff comes out of the slot. And I mean, he can win on the boundary too. The Chargers need this kind of juice in their offense right now. So that's my case for why I want Nabers to the Chargers, Marvin to the Cardinals, and Odunze to the Giants. Those are my 3 ideal.
So the other spot here that we haven't talked about is the Bears. And this is typically like if there's trades or if teams are opting to go tackle, maybe. The Bears and any fall of the wide receivers at the top of this class. We see it in Sycama's mock with Nabers at 9, and then these other 2 with DJ and Connor Rogers. Odunze is the one that falls to 9. I mean, we have Keenan Allen. We have DJ Moore. What do you think about a wide receiver like this getting drafted to a spot that already has 2 established players?
It depends how much they're like gonna throw the ball. It really is what it comes down to, because Shane Waldron, he's a good coach. But you look at the Seahawks last year, and the ball was funneled to 2 wide receivers. And it would be a similar situation in Chicago in terms of weapons that they have. Because it would be, solid running backs in the backfield with guys. I mean, you probably have 3 guys that you trust with the ball in their hands: Roschon, DeAndre Swift, Khalil Herbert. And then you also have 2 very good wide receivers, 2 top 15 wide receivers in DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. I don't know where they rank. I just came up with 15. Don't put too much stock in that. But, and then you add another wide receiver into that, it just becomes a lot of mouths to feed. And I don't know. So it depends on a lot of things from here going forward, but I would assume that they shore up some defensive line rather than going wide receiver after investing in wide receiver with Keenan and, already having DJ Moore in the building. So I don't know. I'm skeptical that they would go wide receiver at 9 after trading for Keenan Allen, but I wouldn't hate it because Keenan Allen's not on a long-term deal. So while you might get a year of suppressed production, you could see it jump up exponentially the year after. Buy low on whoever they take on 9. After
I that was actually my thought on this too, because these mocks did come out after the Keenan Allen trade. And my thought is like, I don't think they do this anymore. Like, I mean, obviously there's a point in time where the talent is just too much.
BPA. Yeah.
But I mean, to have a wide receiver room like that already and a team that's not free of needs. I mean, there's other directions you can go there.
Yeah.
It's a hard sell for me, even with players of this caliber. But to your point, I mean, it's.
Who's the Bears left tackle right now?
Ooh.
Sorry, Bears fans, because I know Darnell Wright's at right tackle, and he's a cornerstone kind of guy. Are we doing Braxton Jones? Is that
what? Yep.
Because
I
don't love that.
Could be better.
Like, if Tennessee, I think they're a lock to take the first tackle off the board. Like, why wouldn't you just take either Olu or Joe Alt at 9 and protect Caleb from, I mean, on both sides? And next year is not going to be a bad wide receiver class. So dip into that after Keenan, gets one more year under his belt. I don't know. So I don't expect them to go wide receiver at this point after the Keenan trade. But if they do, like, you might have a gap year kind of situation.
Also, for the uninitiated, because I don't know if this was explicitly stated, why it's Rome Odunze Day. If you didn't see this, it's because Rome Odunze's reception perception chart was the mythical all green, meaning he was upper percentile success on every single route type based on Matt Harmon's charting of the player in college. So that earned him very high praise from Harmon, who comped him to Devontae Adams. So
good player.
Not a bad one. So, and I mean, Harmon is a person that understands the weight of his words. And I think he meant that with everything he said. It's not to say he's going to go on to have that sort of a career, but the archetype, the architecture.
No, I think that's exactly what he's saying.
Well, if that's the case, let's just stick him at number 1 then. But he did say in the end, all 3 of these players are exceptional and that it ultimately may come down to flavor, which is something we've talked about as well, specifically with Nabers and Odunze. But the bottom line here is you can't really lose, it seems like, with these 3 players. And let's talk about another player that I feel like you can't really lose with, though this becomes a more interesting conversation because we know about these 3 receivers. The landing spots are all at the top of this draft. And Brock Bowers is now becoming a bit of a mystery when we think about where does this player land. Once upon a time, I said there's no way he gets out of the top 10. This is Bijan treatment. Remember when Bijan was in the 20s? He goes 8. This is what's going to happen to Bowers. I'm starting to believe that Bowers is not actually going top 10. And it's because of the positional value of having these wide receivers. You have 3 top-end wide receivers that have to go in the top 10. You have at least a couple tackles that probably end up in the top 10. We're already talking about potentially 4 quarterbacks going in the top 10. Where does the tight end fit into this equation? So where does that leave us? Well, it leaves us with 2 of our mock drafters, DJ and Solak, giving him to the Broncos at 12. We also have a pick even higher than that. The Jets, Mel Kiper has him there at number 10. And then the other 2 with Rodgers and Sycamore are to the Colts at 15. So the range, Collin, is 10 to 15 on Bowers. What do you think about these landing spots?
I'm doing a little bit of light research here with cap hit of a top 10 player, a rookie. So it looks like in terms of 2023 numbers, a tight end that would be taken, because it would be about $4 million, $4 to $5 million of a 2023 cap hit for a tight end between pick 6 and pick 10, which is likely where he'd land if he landed in the top 10. Now that would put him right around like Drew Sample. So we're talking about like value and where he'd land and how much you're getting paid. That's a good deal for a guy that potentially could be a top 10 tight end walking into the league, and saying that with as the words meaning exactly what you hear. Like, this guy has the ability to be one of the elite tight ends in football. So while value and everything matters, and he might end up going in the middle of the first round, and I wouldn't be surprised at that, I also wouldn't be surprised if he goes where we originally expected him to go. So I like all these landing spots. The Jets, the Broncos, the Colts. I like the Colts and the Jets a little more than the Broncos. The Colts, I'd be concerned about volume because they might not have a high volume passing offense, and so he might just get stuck in that 5-6 targets a game, and that's not what you want out of your fantasy tight end. Jets probably has the most opportunity in terms of value touches. Now, Rodgers has never really thrown to a tight end in high volume, so that could be a concern. And Broncos, huge just red flag question marks everywhere with what's going on with that team, because we have no idea. So they're on a hard reset. So Bowers could be one of the cornerstones of that franchise going forward. All that being said, I still expect him to go really high, and I'm not buying the dip. I'm thinking that, well, I guess I am buying the dip.
You're buying it.
I'm buying,
but
I'm not buying it.
But you're not buying it, right? Because that makes perfect
Stock
sense.
Speaking,
obviously,
I'm going to buy the dip, but I'm not buying that he's going to go 15.
First of all, I love the floor here being 15, because while it's becoming murkier whether he would be a top 10 pick, which he absolutely, in my opinion, should be on a talent basis, I don't think there's a dramatic fall here. Like, I think a player like Bowers is maybe getting pushed by positional value and teams that have, needs at these premium positions. I don't think when we get into this range of the draft that teams can ignore the talent and what he's bringing to you as a pass catching weapon, as an offensive weapon in general. I mean, for me, I think the Jets is obviously on paper maybe the best spot here, but to your point, we don't know really what a Rodgers offense looks like with a heavily featured tight end. Also, we know Rodgers and his relationship with rookie players. That's also a question mark potentially, even with a player of this level talent, which
he might be running for office soon.
Yeah,
we don't know.
He might be distracted, but
and he's coming off an Achilles injury, which is the bottom of the list of things.
There is a lot of unknown with the Jets that I feel like people are sort of glossing over, maybe
willfully ignoring.
Yeah. I think of these spots, the Colts is my favorite because it's a young and up and coming team. He can be part of this, blossoming offense under Shane Steichen. Yes, the volume is definitely a question mark here. And we have talented pass catching options in Indianapolis already as well with Michael Pittman, Josh Downs. If they could throw Alec Pierce's name in there as well, maybe. Bowers just brings a different element here. And I think a player like Anthony Richardson could even benefit from a player like this, where they're going to look for ways to get the ball in his hands around the line of scrimmage and let him do what he does best. And now you're starting to even hear more of this discussion because of the news today about the hip drop tackle being outlawed. How does this affect how the tight end is used in the game? When you have this ability to match up bigger players with smaller players who are now being even further limited in how they can attempt to tackle bigger players. So I think Bowers is coming into the NFL at an opportunistic time. And I think a team like the Colts could maximize his skill set. Now, are there other teams in this range that you would prefer to see him in that aren't represented in these mocks? Or do you think we're sort of working with the best of the best here?
I mean, all of these teams in this range are good. Like I mentioned, the Saints at 14 are a solid landing spot for him. I think still the Chargers, and that's all the way up at 5. Like, I think there's plenty of teams that could use a guy like Bowers, like the Titans at 7. I know they're going to take a tackle. Everybody knows this, but once draft day comes around, stuff gets weird. And maybe they're like, man, I've been watching Bowers tape a little more closely the last couple of days. And I know we got Chig, but this is a difference maker. So I just think that there's a wider range of outcomes than we're predicting. And if he gets past the Colts, like I've talked about that Jaguars, Bengals, Rams, those 3 teams, 17, 18, 19, and he's just not getting there. But
not even, no.
Those would be the 3 primetime spots, and maybe they should trade up if Brock Bowers has a little bit of a slide. So that's kind of where I'm at. Is I feel like if he starts to fall, a team trades up for a guy that's this talented.
This is a very trade happy environment. Like I really feel like with the amount of receivers, tackles, quarterbacks, and then a player like Bowers here, like all jockeying in this range, I really feel like it's just a perfect environment for a lot of teams to be very interested in moving up, getting a player on a slide, getting ahead of a team that they know they need to jump. So it's going to be an awesome draft. And one of the most interesting players for me going into night 1 of the draft is this player, Brian Thomas Jr. Because we've talked about this top 4. We spent a considerable amount of time here talking about these options, how they might fall. We know that's the top tier of this class for us, for our purposes here. You get to number 5 and it starts to open up a little bit. And it's not even universal that Brian Thomas Jr. may be your number 5 player in this class in terms of fantasy. But in this case, he was universally, not quite, almost universally the next wide receiver drafted. We had 3. This one surprised me a little bit, but I get it kind of. Mel Kiper, Solak, Rogers had Brian Thomas Jr. going 20th to the Steelers, which is not one that we've talked about or even really heard much of, except now everybody's on that page after the Deontay Johnson trade. Then we also had Trevor Sikkema 17 to the Jags, which is something that we've talked about no, I'm misspeaking. I'm looking ahead to the next name. We have Sikkema at 28 to the Bills. And then we have DJ 23 to Arizona. So Steelers, Cardinals, Bills. We know about the Cardinals spot. Obviously, in this scenario, they traded down. They didn't get one of the top guys. They end up with Brian Thomas Jr. In this situation. We know about the Bills, and this is going to come up later with other wide receivers as well. The Steelers is the really interesting spot here at number 20, because technically there is a need with the Deontay Johnson trade, but what do you think about the fit?
So the reason you bring this up is because he does a lot of things well that George Pickens also does well. So I feel like you go in a different direction if you're the Steelers, and maybe like we've been talking about, they see Brian Thomas as a ball of clay, and he's just scratching the surface of what he can be. And last year was a true breakout for Brian Thomas, as you know, prior to this past year, he hadn't scratched 400 yards, and then he goes for over 1,000 with so many touchdowns. So I could see why they would like Brian Thomas, and you give Russell Wilson and Justin Fields guys that can attack the perimeter. And guess what? If you're starting Russell Wilson, he's not throwing the ball over the middle anyway. So give you guys that can go get a jump ball. But I don't know. I don't love the fit here. And there's a lot of wide receivers that would work really well across from George Pickens in this draft class. But if you're going for BPA and you're going for ceiling upside hit play, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head with, I mean, it's a player that is operating right now as essentially a George Pickens. Like, and Pickens has evolved his game, while he's been in the NFL a little bit. What Brian Thomas Jr. is right now is that vertical separator. He's a vertical threat, and everything else is a little bit rough around the edges. So it's interesting to think about an offense that's led by Arthur Smith, that we don't know what it looks like in Pittsburgh.
Oh, I forgot
that's
about
led
that.
by Russell Wilson, which we don't know what it looks like in Pittsburgh. I mean, there's so much fluidity and change in this offense right now that I just don't love the idea of them adding another wide receiver here at this spot. Like this would really, I wouldn't say it would change anything for me, but I would not be excited to pick Brian Thomas Jr. if this was the spot. And I was a little bit surprised to see that three different people landed on this as the pick for the Steelers. But obviously, outside of that, we know about the Cardinals, and if they don't get into the top end, like, this is great. This is a great fit, consolation prize, whatever you want to say. The Bills, which are going to come up again very shortly with the next player we talk about, and it's kind of one and the same, which is getting Josh Allen, essentially an upgraded Gabe Davis.
Yep.
And that is exactly what Brian Thomas Jr. can be in this offense. The fit is excellent. I just don't know if he gets there. It feels like there's enough steam and buzz around this name to suggest that he's not going to be available as late as 28. That's not to say that he won't be. But I think after his combine and after what we saw this past year on tape, I think there's a lot of reason to believe that top 20, top 23-ish, like we saw with DJ, that's more of the range as opposed to getting into that late part of the first round.
Having Gabe Davis 2.0 just fall into your lap would be ideal here for Brian Thomas, because he fills a role that they need, because Diggs is not the downfield threat that he once was. And having a guy like Brian Thomas who can take the top off, and, Josh Allen can showcase the big arm, while having Stephon Diggs be more of a possession guy through and through, would be great. But like you said, probably not getting to 28 because of the steam that he's been gaining later in the process.
It does seem like, based on these mocks, which there's 5 of them, it's a fairly big sample, different people hearing different things maybe, or hearing the same things from the same people, whatever. It is interesting that his ceiling in this draft was 20, because I think he's been talked about even higher than that. Like, when we talked about perfect matches, it was the Jags at 17. And at that point in time, that was not a hot take. Like that was something that you were seeing in the media in terms of earlier mocks.
Now they have Gabe Davis.
And now they have Gabe Davis. So they got the worst version of Brian
Right.
Thomas Jr. Shots fired. Gabe Davis truthers. But let's talk about the next guy here, because it's like one in the same conversation with AD Mitchell. And this is my tier here with these players, is Brian Thomas Jr., AD Mitchell. This is a tier for me at this point of the draft at number 5 and 6. We see AD Mitchell kind of having a similar arc here in these mock drafts, but instead of topping out at 20, here's where we have 17 come into play, because Trevor Sikkema has him going 17 to the Jags, despite the additions that the Jags made to the wide receiver room. Yes, they lost Calvin Ridley, but we get Gabe Davis in there. Still have AD Mitchell going as high as 17. We also have the Bills, to no surprise. This was Rodgers and Solak had him 28 to the Bills, which again, this one feels maybe, I don't know. We'll get to that in a second. But the Chiefs, that's our third team. DJ and Kuiper both having AD Mitchell going 32 to the world champion Kansas City Chiefs. I already know what the best fit is, Collin. Does he get there is my question.
This is such AD has been such an interesting player to follow through the season and the off season. With a range like this, it doesn't feel like he ends up at 32. And we're going to continue to mock the Chiefs wide receivers every single year at 30, 31, 32. And they're never going to take one. Like they're going to take a developmental edge or a developmental tackle or a corner. But Mitchell would be really damn fun on this team. So obviously that's the best fit with Rashee Rice. But I don't think he gets there. And even if he's there, I think the Chiefs have a similar identity as the Packers when it comes to wide receivers in the first round. They just don't do it.
I want to say that this year's different, but being a Packers fan, I understand that it's never different. No matter what the class is, no matter what the players are, no matter how well they fit into an offense, I get it. And I agree with you. I don't think he's there at 32. I think what we saw from both of these players, Brian Thomas Jr. and AD Mitchell at the NFL Combine, to me says they're going top 25. That's my guess, is that both of these guys go top 25. Even though we have 3 going at the top of the draft, going top 10, I think we see a second wave come in. And because these players are just too big, too athletic, they're too alluring for NFL teams. And there's enough teams in this range that can use wide receiver help. I mean, it becomes a more important need every year as 11 personnel gets more, popular. We need to spread the field more. We're going to pass more. I think these sorts of players end up in that range. Now, 28, it's in the cards.
It's pushing it, but I feel like we're there.
It's pushing it, but it's in the cards. And that would be something. Like AD Mitchell to the Bills, I think could start a movement where you might have some folks pounding the table for this is the 5th player in the class. And by folks, I might be one of them. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how it shakes out. But
this would be the spot, I think, for Mitchell to go to the moon is the Bills. They vacated. I mean, I think there's a little bit of a Khalil Shakir thing where he played really well down the stretch last year, and he was better than Stephon Diggs in terms of production in the last 8 games of the season. So there's I'm sure a Khalil Shakir cohort out there. And I think Mitchell slots in really well with both of those guys. So I don't think you have to be that stressed. I think Shakir ends up being the third guy in that group. And Mitchell, similar story with Brian Thomas, like you said, can absolutely thrive next to Diggs, and he can become a great wide receiver too in that offense.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it as you're talking, like the Gabe Davis role. Yes, theoretically, talent-wise, this is an improvement, but the volume and the consistency, those are still question marks. They're still question marks. So we can't just expect a player, just because he's really talented, to come in and just suddenly eat up all the targets, be Josh's guy. It is a little muddier than that, I guess. But the fit NFL wise is perfect. So, all right. Those players, everybody that we've talked about, appeared in every single first round of these mock drafts. There was not a drafter that did not include them. We had A.D. Mitchell bottoming out at 32, just making the cut. Now we get into some players here that didn't make all of the first rounds. And so this is an entirely different conversation. We're going to start with Keon Coleman, because this has been obviously a very hot topic, Coleman, and where does he go and how does he fit into this wide receiver group anymore? We had one that put him in the first round, Ben Solak.
My guy, Ben.
Solak had him going 29 to the Lions. The others that only did a first round did not obviously include him, but I'm including Trevor Sikkema's pick here as well, being that this was a 3-round mock. He had him going 59th to the Texans. So that is near the end of the second round. There were many other wide receivers that went in front of him in Sikkema's draft. What do you think about these spots, and where are you on Keon Coleman's range and how much it matters to you?
I like the Lions, I can tell you that. And if they're spending first round capital on him to play across from Amon-Ra, who is their only real wide receiver, like they have a lot of good role guys, and Sam Laporta is obviously very good. Gibbs is going to be a pass catcher, but in terms of a boundary wide receiver, they don't really have one. So I would love it if he ended up at the Lions at 29. Now, the Texans at 59 is good, but I don't love it. Like, they have Nico Collins that does a lot of the same stuff as that Keon Coleman does well. They have Tank Dell there. He'd come in as a third guy with pretty low draft capital, like late second round, which, I mean, it's not low. I shouldn't say that. But, you know, in terms of this kind of range where you're talking about maybe the ceiling's 29, like then you're looking at 59. I don't know. Don't love that. But what I do love is Keon Coleman. So I'm going to keep speaking the Keon Coleman truth. I said, I think it was last week, if Keon Coleman has no more supporters, I am no longer alive. So I'm going to keep pushing the Keon Coleman train, and he might just end up being a really good value in rookie drafts if you believe in the guy's talent, because the box scores don't look great. The 4.6 in the combine was not ideal, and now we're looking at a little bit of suppressed value here. And I think that I would like to capitalize on it. Others might see all these red flags and be out on it, and I totally understand.
Yep, you're higher on him than I am, but I'm still in on him. Still think he's a first-round player. I mean, I think I have him at number 8, 9 right now. I'm anticipating high round 2. And if we're talking late round 2, like in the Sikkema mock, it's gonna come down to landing spot, and how does that affect him in terms of how is he fitting in with some of these other names and where they went. I just don't see that happening. I know that there's concerns, but like the ball of clay here, the player, the athlete, 20 years old, what you've seen, the flashes. I mean, there's so much to be excited about. And I think that's where Solak was coming from when he picked him in the first round, was like, hey man, this is filling a role that the Lions need in this room. They don't need him to be the guy. They already have two extremely talented pass catchers in this offense. They already have Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield. You know, we don't need him to be the guy, but he's gonna be a damn good player, and he can develop into an even better player. So I would love it if he went 29, but I don't know how realistic that is. The one that does surprise me a little bit here is Troy Franklin, who did not appear in a single first round of any of these mock drafts.
They watched his gauntlet.
They watched the gauntlet and they were like, no. Connor Rogers did not let him go far. He did go 33, which is the first pick of the second round. I believe that's also the T. Higgins pick. So there's some good juju at 33 with wide receivers. But that was the Panthers. And then Sycamore had him 48 to guess who? The Kansas City Chiefs. So, I mean, this is more realistic for the Chiefs. Like, go wide receiver in round 2. And if it's a guy like Franklin, who there's a little bit of overlap maybe with like the Hollywood Brown signing, but you're still getting a bigger bodied player with Franklin, I still think there's a fit here. I mean, it's just, it's what do you expect with these wide receivers? Where can you expect guys like this to fall on draft day? And you see the range here with a guy like Franklin.
Well, the 33rd pick is not a rich history of wide receivers, because since 2000, I believe the only wide receiver selected with the 33rd pick is T. Higgins, which is pretty surprising. But that being said, Franklin, I mean, this was, I think, our perfect match for him was the Panthers at 33. And if that plays out, I think he fits pretty good there, but not as good as he did when we did the perfect match episode, because I think he fills a similar role as Deontay Johnson. So that's a question mark. The Chiefs, obviously, will keep mocking him wide receivers. We'll see if he takes them. He plays a very different role than Rashee Rice, though, and Travis Kelce, obviously. So I think he would fit really well there. I could see him going also early round 2, like you suggested with Keon Coleman. So, I mean, I like most landing spots that, need a wide receiver, because Franklin, I think, can be a high-end wide receiver 2 on an NFL team.
All right. So there were 2 other wide receivers that got round 1 capital in any of these mocks. And I want to shout them out because obviously any wide receiver that's going round 1 is getting our attention for fantasy purposes. So the 2 players that we have here are Xavier Worthy, which maybe not a surprise. Everybody knows by now we're just lower on him than a lot of people are. In this case, it was Mel Kiper had him 26 to the Buccaneers, and Trevor Sycamore had him 30th to the Ravens. So we got Bucks and Ravens for Worthy. Then we also had the other Xavier Legette, made 1 appearance in a first round mock. That was Kiper coming back 3 picks after Worthy to the Bucks. We got Legette to the Lions at 29, which is what we just talked about with Keon Coleman. So my question with these players, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this. These are guys that are lower in our rankings as opposed to the other guys we've talked about. Everybody we've talked about to this point was a dynasty first rounder for us. Would these landing spots change your opinion of these players in a significant way? Would either of these players move significantly up your board if they got round 1 capital?
Legette would, for sure. Like, I see Legette as a very enigmatic player that I'm really interested to see what the NFL thinks of him, because he was in college for a long time and wasn't good until last year. So a lot of question marks with Legette. And if a team believes in him at 29, like, he moves up a little bit. Now, Worthy, on the other hand, and Legette at 39 also would be really nice, because, I mean, the Panthers kind of did this experiment with John Mingo last year, but Legette is a little more souped up than John Mingo was. So either way, Worthy, I almost expect to get first round capital. And maybe I shouldn't, based on what we're seeing here, but neither of these landing spots are that interesting for me. They don't move them very much, because the Bucks, they have Mike Evans, they have Chris Godwin, Xavier Worthy, he'll be a deep threat there. Cool, that's awesome. Ravens, can we please get Lamar like a full-time outside receiver if you're going to take somebody in the first round? Like, stop drafting small guys, stop drafting light guys. We have Zay Flowers there. We're good. We did Hollywood Brown. Rashad Bateman's still a work in progress. Like, let's not take Xavier Worthy to clog up, the valuable Zay Flowers touches. So neither of these move the needle for me, for Worthy. And Legette, I mean, if he got picked this high, I'd be surprised, and I'd be pleasantly surprised.
I do think it's funny that the Ravens is one of the spots for Worthy, after we've talked about Hollywood Brown, maybe the comp for this player. We can literally just go back and look at what happened with Hollywood Brown in Baltimore. So,
hey, he had 1,000 yards one of those years.
He did. I mean, he's not a bad player.
No.
Kansas City, is there a hive? There probably is, right? You're the hive. All right. Let's talk about running backs, because we've talked about 1 million receivers so far, but that's the nature of the class. It's not enough. There's a lot more I could have included here, guys going top of round 2 in these other mocks, but we'll call it there. Let's talk about running backs. How I want to structure this conversation is that we kind of have a general idea of what our tier 1 looks like with this running back class between the two of us. It's not a shared opinion, but there are 3 running backs collectively in our tier 1. Is that accurate, would you say?
Yeah.
Jonathon Brooks, Trey Benson, and Braelon Allen. Jonathon Brooks here. Are we thinking about something?
No, we can.
Okay.
I don't know if Trey Benson. Well, anyway.
But what I'm saying is Trey Benson is in my tier 1.
Tier 1.
Braelon Allen would not be in my tier 1,
gotcha.
but he is in yours. So collectively, we have this shared tier.
Yes, I thought you were saying like on average, and I was like, oh.
No, I don't
take
want
them all
Braelon
and divide
Allen
them by
tier. Get him out of my tier.
All right.
Yeah, that's right.
Jesus, he's not in anybody else's tier either.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Jonathon Brooks, though, is the very interesting player here in this group, because every single one of these mocks was in agreement. And these are like 3-round mocks. They all landed on the same thing. Jonathon Brooks, Cowboys, pick 56. Round 2 pick, round 2 capital, to Dallas, which did not address its running back need. Through free agency, we lost Tony Pollard. We did not bring in any of the big names that were linked to Dallas. So that creates the scenario where this becomes potentially the most desirable running back spot in the NFL heading into the draft. Jonathon Brooks was the player, Collin. So fit-wise, value-wise, what does this do for you?
This is it. This is the ideal situation for any of the running backs, I'd say, but Jonathon Brooks especially, because we both think he has a ton of upside and a ton of juice, And there's an injury recovery that needs to happen here, and they would need to remain patient. But I think currently Deuce Vaughn's their RB1. So they're going to need to fill that spot with somebody real. And Brooks might be that guy. And like you said, all three of these say he's going to be that guy. And I don't know if that's like, I don't know how that even happens. Like you said, like, how are we all in agreement? Is there some information out there? I don't know, but I would love him here. And this would be the RB1 of the class if he's taken by the Cowboys. I mean, other things have to fall into place. But I think that with how this running back class is right now, draft selection like this, first running back off the board potentially, this, second round draft capital, like this is what you want. This is what you're asking for with any running back, and with a guy that's this talented, here we are,
Yeah, the only other running back in this collective group of mocks that was drafted in round 2 was Blake Corum in Chad Reuter's mock. He had him actually as the RB1 drafted 47 to the Giants. It just feels extremely rich to me. But what do I know? So
he's going number 5.
Right. So in most cases here, we're seeing that round 2, not a lot of running backs are going, first of all. Jonathon Brooks is the guy that's going at the, near the end, second half of round 2. I am trying to understand if this sways me, because it should, because I have these players very close. These players being Jonathon Brooks and Trey Benson, my top 2 running backs in this class. Trey Benson is my RB1. And if Jonathon Brooks gets round 2 capital, great landing spot. Benson's nowhere to be found here. We're entering the 3rd round. He's not off the board yet. Does Jonathon Brooks become my RB1? And it feels like it feels like he has to. It feels like he must. And yet I'm like, man, I love Trey Benson.
Well, I mean, Trey Benson, let's just go into him, and it's the Chiefs at 95, the Patriots, which is easily the lowest, the Patriots at 68, and the Giants at 70. And clearly, I think we can agree the Giants would be the best landing spot of the 3 here, because they don't have a running back. I mean, they bring in Devin Singletary. They have not Evan Hull, but Eric Gray. They have Eric Gray, who they drafted last year. And nobody else. And Trey Benson has an opportunity there, but none of these spots are close to as attractive as Brooks to the Cowboys. So I think that's where you're having a little bit of a crisis of faith.
Well, and that's the problem with what we saw in free agency and with how the running backs moved is I don't think there's a lot of spots right now where if a running back was drafted there, you'd say, oh yeah,
that moves him up.
He's the guy. It's where all systems go. Like, we know the class on a talent basis is already depressed. Like, it's not the best it's not the
I'm
most
depressed about it.
Yeah, I am too. I need a running back. But so it's just exacerbated when you see these spots and then you're like, oh God, the Patriots, really? I don't want that. But
yeah.
When we're into round 3, we're starting to talk about, the RB2s, 1Bs, this is what we're talking about here. So my hope for Benson is that this is just not accurate. Like, I think he's a second round player. I think he's a second round talent at the running back position. I think athletically checked obviously every single box at the combine. The tape it's not phenomenal. It's not like, man, this is the next guy in the, next runner in the NFL. But I think in this class, he's dynamic. He's explosive in a way that not a lot of other backs are. I would be shocked if he's like going. I mean, 95 is ridiculous, to be honest.
That's crazy.
Like, That's not happening. It's just not happening. I'll say it right now. But what is the spot? I don't know. I think the Giants is something that I identified pre-free agency as like, if Saquon leaves, I like the fit. I like Trey Benson coming in to this offense in that role. Don't love, the situation entirely with the line play and kind of what we saw from Saquon last year, like how much of that was situational versus the player. So yeah, I think if this is how it shakes out, these three examples in every single case, I feel like Jonathon Brooks becomes RB1.
So speaking of landing spots in general, we have Blake Corum, who was mocked to the Buccaneers, the Giants, and the Chargers. And then Jalen Wright mocked to the Cardinals and the Raiders. And then Braelon Allen also mocked to the Buccaneers at varying spots. Jalen Wright at 66 and 77. Blake Corum has the widest range of outcomes. Like you said, 47 was his high end, and the Bucks at 92 was the low end, which, I mean, that's crazy, that range of outcomes. And then Braelon Allen at 93. But when we talk about landing spots, out of those teams, there are a couple that need running backs. Do you think the Chargers is easily the best one?
I think it is. I'm hesitating because I'm very interested by the Cardinals.
Okay.
Like, James Conner is near the end of what we should, expect in terms of being a highly productive runner at the NFL level.
He's getting taken out back soon.
Yeah, he's getting taken out back. I believe he's only under contract there for one more year. They have no incentive to cut him right now, so they haven't, but they could. The Chargers, obviously, with Harbaugh coming in, they want to establish the run. Greg Roman, OC. We're talking about Gus Edwards being the bell cow right now. Like, there's opportunity, sure, of course, and obviously the connection with Blake Corum is there, and that's what we widely expect would happen. But I might say the Cardinals.
Okay.
I really like what the Cardinals did with James Conner last year. I talked about this on Perfect Matches. I really feel like Trey Benson is a great fit there. I would love to see that. I think Conner can play this year, that we can have a shared role, and then move on from Conner next year. Whoever they draft takes the lead. I think they showed last year they want to establish the run. There's a good plan in place with Drew Petzing. I like that spot a lot. It's a sneaky running back spot for me.
He is a 30-year-old unrestricted free agent after this season, James Conner. So I think that kind of tells you. And I mean, if they wanted to, which it is unlikely at this point, but they can save $4.5 million if they cut him. So there is a world where that happens. I just don't think that we're living in it. But
yeah,
after this year, you have a guy who's in a juicy spot, and if he gets, day 2 capital, I feel like you can feel pretty good. And I agree that it is a really good spot. I think the Chargers is the best spot, but I think the Cardinals is a close second. And the Raiders, I mean, Zamir White, are we buying that? I don't know.
That's a sneaky one too. Like, there's opportunity there because it's not Zamir White's team. So right. I think that's one that's not really being talked about right now. That if somebody goes there, there's a good chance there's some steam behind that name at that point in time. I want to cap this discussion. We already talked about my guys here, Benson, obviously.
I don't want to talk about it.
We got to talk about it, man.
That's okay.
Because
it's been a long episode. We could just wrap it up here.
A perfect final chapter to this very fun exploration of landing spots, because your RB1, Braelon Allen, only appeared in one of our three-round mock drafts, meaning 2 out of 3 do not think he is a day 2 player. Chad Reuter had him going 93 to the Bucks, which is near the end of the 3rd round. How much does this affect you if this is the reality? If Braelon Allen is a day 3 pick, let's call it even let's say 4th round pick, early day 3, how much does that affect you in terms of where you are ranking him and drafting him?
I don't know. I feel like we've kind of been approaching this point with Braelon Allen, and it would not be good. I would say that. And it would be completely dependent on where he ends up going and what team he ends up getting drafted by. That much is pretty clear. Like, I don't think that's but I don't know. I just don't feel like he was that bad. Like, I don't understand the process that leads us to make him a 4th rounder and a late 3rd rounder. But if that's where we are in the NFL, like, maybe I need to reset my expectations, and, you know, I will wait until that day comes before I adjust things. But I would be surprised by that. Well, I guess I can't even say I'd be surprised by this, because this is where I'm being told we're supposed to be. So hopefully I'm pleasantly surprised and he ends up being, a day 2 guy. But I mean, it depends what the landing spot is. If he's a 4th round pick, and like I said with Jonathon Brooks, it's like, if this running back class is so flexible, it's so fluid, that any one of these guys gets a great landing spot, like, rankings are going to change. And that's where I'm at. Right now, we're ranking them based on who they are as a player we see on tape and what we expect. If that's going to change based on what the NFL thinks about these players. And if Jonathon Brooks gets picked at 56 to the Cowboys and he's the RB1 there, and Braelon Allen's a 4th round pick to the Patriots, like, okay, we're going to adjust expectations. That's kind of where I'm falling here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm lower on Braelon Allen, obviously, than you are. I'm looking here. I have a late round 3 grade on him. So I still think he's a day 2 player. So this is interesting to find, to see that maybe the projections are tailoring towards day 3 for Braelon Allen. But I think it does go into the conversations that we've had and about how he's a little scheme specific. This last season at Wisconsin was his worst tape. It's because he was in a different scheme. They were asking him to do a lot more zone running out of the shotgun. You've talked about how the NFL is moving in kind of the reverse direction in some cases, where we have more under center, we have more gap scheme. That's where he's going to thrive. So it's just going to be a partnership thing. Does the right team find him in the right spot of the draft? So
get this guy on the Browns. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
There you go.
All right.
I'm still hoping for the Ravens. I don't care. I never gave up on the stream.
Well, the problem with the Ravens, the reason I soured on the Ravens a little bit, is because Lamar doesn't go under center. It's just not a thing that he does. So unless you're going to, do pistol all the time, which is possible, and they've done before, I don't know.
I still think I agree that he's better from running in under center formations, but I also think the biggest problem with Braelon Allen is the ask of him to run more zone this year. I think he can figure it out if he's running shotgun gap scheme. Like, if they're asking him to do, let's like what we said before, the Gus Edwards role, it's prime for him. It's prime for him in Baltimore. And it's there for the taking. So get him there.
I wish A.J. Dillon came back to the Packers, because that would be a nice role for him.
You're telling me, man. All right. that's a lot of players, a lot of landing spots, and we are a month out from the draft, so we are still figuring things out here. I really think this draft is setting up to be one of the more exciting.
Dolphins.
For who?
Braelon.
No.
He can be the Thunder.
Yuck.
No. Come on.
No.
They're always
There's
under
no
center.
Thunder in the McDaniel scheme.
That's
we
what
need
they
more
need.
lightning.
Playoff,
more lightning.
Playoff football. Braelon Allen. Cold weather running back. Come on.
Jalen Wright. Match Jalen Wright up with Devon Achane. It's Raheem Mostert, but younger.
Oh, sorry. You were closing. I got to let you close.
Yeah. It's going to be a really fun draft. That's the point. I think we talked about the top end here, how exciting that is with the trade possibilities. I really do think that because this happens every year, we think we know everything already a month out. We think we know these landing spots. It's like, oh yeah, of course, Marvin's either going to go to A or B. Like that's going to happen. We don't know. So we're still a month away from figuring that out. We're going to get there, and we are going to continue on our path to the draft. And that continues next week. What are we doing next week? I should probably pull that up and remind myself what we're doing. We are doing, drum roll, this or that. Look at that.
Oh,
hey.
I like this or that.
So we break down the landing spots. Now we get to talk comps. And if you remember this or that from last year, or maybe you weren't even here last year,
welcome.
Welcome aboard. This or that is our fun way of doing comps where we kind of take it to two extremes. Players are either this or that. And usually they're somewhere in the middle, but that's the fun of it because comps can be a dangerous game, like calling Rome Odunze Devontae Adams before he takes his first NFL snap. But who am I to argue with Matt Harmon?
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to go. It's basically the best bit that we can do is like, they're either going to be a Hall of Famer or they're going to be horrible.
Right.
Because this is what everybody's comp is.
This is our ceiling of bits. This is the best that we got. So we
right.
wait all year for this one.
Or it's our worst bit.
Yeah. Hey, I see what you did there. If you enjoyed our discussion about mock draft landing spots and thinking about this class in terms of where campers may fall a month from today, be sure to find us on Twitter at camp_dynasty and TikTok at camp.dynasty, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can get in touch with us in all of those places. Let us know what you thought. Let us know what you agree, disagree with, all of those things. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like, rate, review, subscribe, share, and follow is the one I missed, I think, the pod feed. Yeah. We very much appreciate all of that.
All of it. Put it on Tumblr, Pinterest it.
Bring it back. Why not?
Yeah, pin it. I know that.
Hey,
I don't think we have a single female listener, and like Pinterest, 80%.
Now you're
female.
just stereotyping the social channels.
I can see our analytics, but if you are, go pin it on Pinterest.
You know what? What have we been missing in the draft community? A draft Pinterest. That's what we've been missing.
A board.
Yeah.
A draft board on Pinterest. Come on.
This is a missed opportunity. We have to explore it.
Yeah.
We're off the rails, but thank you for stopping by Camp Dynasty this week. And we'll see you next week.